Welcome, gamers, weebs, and nerds alike. With spooky season in full swing, it's about time for horror games to start getting their days of streamer marathons and replays. So we figured now's a perfect time to share our picks for some of the best horror games of all time. Be sure to subscribe for more geek content, and without further ado, let's dive right into today's list.
First on our list, we have Dead Space 2. This is an obvious one as it is leagues and bounds one of the most terrifying games to have ever come out. The intro, which showed up in our top 10 game openings of all time, sets the tone immediately. The setting is a little bit more open than the first game, and there are some horrifying set pieces like the daycare room or the sprawling cityscape that lays in ruin. This took what the first game did well and expanded on it in the best ways. None of the scares feel forced or out of place. The story is still interesting and the combat feels a lot smoother and more engaging. It also kept you guessing, keeping the tension high as the areas where enemies and bosses came from were varied and didn't give too many hints. The audio design is also amazing. It really feels like a big city ship, and you can't tell sometimes if it's just the TV outside the store or a necromorph waiting for dinner. The suits also kinda look pretty awesome. This is one of the very few games that made me put down the controller for a little bit because I was so scared of what might come next, or what necromorph will pop out of this random corner or vent. Everything about this game works, and hopefully we will be seeing a remake in the near future after the success of Dead Space 1.
Next up, we have Layers of Fear. This psychological horror gem, set within a Victorian-era mansion, sees us take control of an artist who has returned to his studio with the goal to complete his magnum opus. Our role is to figure out how this task should be completed. The challenge comes from, like many other horror titles, the puzzles, which require the player to search the environment for visual clues to lead them to acquire the supplies needed for the artist's masterpiece. The house, while seeming straightforward at first, quickly changes around us into a horrifying shell of its former self by all sorts of antics that transform the rooms in ways like stretching the hallways past the point of what should be possible, or by rooms you've been in before now completely being inaccessible or warped grotesquely into something completely different. These changes in the environment provide the groundwork for the puzzles while also providing plenty of jump scares and unsettling moments along the way. The bulk of the story comes from various objects we find that uncover all matter of facts and darker secrets of the painter's past. While completing the painting, there is a letter that is slowly pieced together, which shows the origin of his masterpiece, and objects which explain the secret of the painter through dialogue flashbacks. Layers of Fear provides a unique setting and story that make it a great playthrough at least once. The multiple endings and DLC add to its replayability and have helped cement it as a personal favorite. We still have yet to check out the sequel or the 2024 remake, but look forward to it soon.
Next, we got Lethal Company. This was such a surprise to pretty much everyone, as it came entirely out of nowhere, but it's so much fun, while also being kind of scary at times. This is basically you and your friends working for a wonderful company that sends you to different planets, and your job is to gather trinkets and gizmos to sell for a profit. The only problem is, there's a few different monsters that will try and unalive you, and if your whole crew dies, all of your items you have saved go away. If you fail to meet the quota, which goes up each time you complete it, the company deals with you in the only respectable way, by spacing you. The proximity chat makes the game much more terrifying, especially since there are monsters that can replicate your teammates' voices. There's also ones that face-hug you and muffle your voice, or react based off the noises you make. This adds to the tension and suspense of the game and makes it all the more horrifying. It is a smaller game and made by a singular person, but it is so much fun and a great spooky game to play with your friends this season.
Next up, one of the newest titles on our list, House. House is a hauntingly charming 8-bit horror title where you play as a young girl trying to escape the horrors of her, well, house, and save or condemn her family along the way, all while racing against the clock. This will not all happen on your first try, as the gameplay loop of House is a repeatable day, so prepare to fail a lot. While the gameplay is simple, there is so much to do that no two runs of this title will ever truly be the same. You must explore the house while collecting various items that will help or even possibly hinder you along the way. The environment is constantly changing in response to your actions, so you must navigate these changes quickly and cautiously, as one wrong step could quickly lead to an accident, if you will, or lead you into the arms of one of the various horrors that plague the house. While seeming relatively simple at surface level, House is actually very unique in its challenge, as the game doesn't hold your hand at all. Besides button prompts with picking up or telling you how to use an item, there's really no help. It just lets you figure it out, and we love that. This is truly something for every flavor of horror fan in this title, with everything from psychological horror to Lovecraftian elements. So be sure to do yourself a favor and pick up House this spooky season.
Now we have Outlast. This game really encapsulates the found footage horror to darn near perfection. It follows an investigative journalist who decides to investigate a remote psychiatric hospital and begins to uncover the horrors that happened and are happening there. You can't fight back in this game, so you have to play it safe and haul absolute ass at times in order to stay alive. The need to also pay attention to your camera's battery level as well as your surroundings helps add to the stress and tension the game brings. The abandoned hospital looks dreary and grotesque, the small details really help bring it to life, and the enemies look creepy and sadistic, especially that doctor. All around, if you like found footage horror, this is the perfect game to pick up and play right now.
Next up, we have Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Need I say any more than, how's it going, bros? My name is PewDiePie. I'm sorry. Amnesia is a first-person survival horror classic. The player takes control of Daniel, who must navigate Castle Brennenburg while avoiding all manner of dangers and solving puzzles. One of the more, at the time, unique mechanics in the gameplay of Amnesia is managing Daniel's sanity. Your sanity can be reduced for staying in the dark too long, witnessing unsettling events, or looking directly at monsters. Low sanity causes visual and auditory hallucinations and even results in attracting more monsters and even death on high difficulties. While you can manage this with tinderboxes, candles, torches, etc., all of the sources of light are in fact limited. This really sets the tone of Amnesia, because aside from all the horrifying beings you may encounter within the castle, even the darkness itself is an enemy. Speaking of enemies, our only way of fighting back in Amnesia is running and hiding, which you will be doing a lot of in Amnesia. As for the story itself, Amnesia does a wonderful job of setting the unsettling tone right away, by Daniel waking up on the floor of this somehow vastly empty castle with nothing more than a note you wrote to yourself telling you to kill Alexander. There is so much to uncover in Amnesia, and we don't want to spoil it here. So, if you've been living under a rock for the past 10 plus years, be sure to check out Amnesia: The Dark Descent this season.
Now we have Resident Evil 7. This game was much needed for the franchise after the divided split of 5 and the all-around failure of 6. The series decided to return to its roots and do so in first person, and it worked amazingly well. This meshes multiple different horror tropes almost seamlessly well, and while some were executed better than others, they all do a great job at being scary, keeping the tension, and being all around fun, with the dad being the stalker slasher trope, the mom being the body horror bug trope, the son being the torture puzzle saw trope, and the daughter being the monster trope. They all managed to hit all the nails without being overdone and exhausting. The places look gross and disgusting, the visuals are great and hold up really well today, and the gameplay is fun and reminiscent of older Resident Evil games, where you have to manage your items and ammo. Sometimes it's better to run than fight. Just like Dead Space 2, the sound design is on point and feels like a raggedy old house in the middle of the bayou, and some of the jump scares are really well placed, making this not only one of the best Resident Evil games, but one of the best horror games out there right now to play.
Next up, we have a channel favorite in Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 is the quintessential horror experience. While the original release needs no introduction, as its influence is clear in other survival and survival horror titles like Dead Space and The Last of Us, the remake took everything from the original and made it darn near perfect. From the Spanish countryside being way more haunting and threatening, to the pacing being way more streamlined, the Resident Evil 4 remake came out at the perfect time, as the original is a hard replay simply from the outdated controls. Whether you're a fan of the original or a newcomer with a hankering for some action-heavy horror of the highest quality, Resident Evil 4 is like a parasite-riddled Spaniard, as it is a no-brainer. Its combat is now friction-free, but no less stress-inducing, thanks to its ferocious cast of creatures that are constantly changing to keep you on your toes. Its story rapidly pushes you through a series of action scenes that are diverse and unwavering in intensity, and its world is rich in detail and full of fun and often terrifying surprises. Its improvements over the original are too numerous to list. From simple quality of life changes to completely overhauled boss fight mechanics, and except for the diminished personality of the merchant, the team at Capcom has barely put a foot wrong. What are you buying? Only the most relentlessly exciting Resident Evil adventure of all time that's been rebuilt, refined, and realized to the full limits of its enormous potential. A wise choice, bro. Be sure to check it out this season.
Next, we have Dead Rising. Of course, we had to include a campy horror game on here, and with the remaster just coming out, what better time is there to hop into Willamette Mall and kill some zombinos? There are hordes and hordes of them to go through in this game with all sorts of different weapons, from 2x4s and swords to lawnmowers and Mega Man blasters. The game follows Frank West as he drops into Willamette Mall in Colorado and tries to cover a story as the zombie apocalypse breaks out. There's a fun minigame of taking pictures, and at least in the OG, you get some extra points for some of those captures you get. If you know, you know. There's a time element you have to be careful of here, but for the most part, you have free reign to do whatever you want between main missions. The really scary part, though, isn't the zombies. It's the adequately named people called psychopaths. From clowns juggling chainsaws, doctors at a supermarket, to straight up convicts, they're all downright insane and kinda creepy. This is a great game to just wind down, have some laughs, and enjoy some zombie horror carnage.
Finally, we have Silent Hill 2. Where Resident Evil 4 is one of the best experiences in survival horror for its action, Silent Hill 2 is that for the story elements. Aside from its sinister small-town setting that felt like stepping into the pages of a Stephen King novel, Silent Hill 2 stood apart from other survival horror stories of its era by putting just as much focus on the battle with personal demons as it did with regular encounters of the horrors within the town. Protagonist James is lured to a remote mining town by the promise of making contact with his dead wife. It is not a battle-hardened member of a zombie-killing special unit that we are seeing this through, but rather an ordinary man, forced to confront some truly extraordinary things. The struggles with his own guilt and trauma both humanize him and add believable heft to the horrors that unfold around him. The recently released Silent Hill 2 remake took all of these things and turned them up to an 11. It smoothly polishes down the rough edges of the original game's combat while making its nightmarish environments appear far more striking and menacing to explore. Previously simple and pointless boss battles have been transformed into substantially more intense encounters that feel dangerous. And its haunting audio design kept me tuned into the fact that every foggy street I walked down could quickly hurry me towards my own dead end. Silent Hill 2 was a great way to visit or revisit one of the most dread-inducing destinations in the history of survival horror, so be sure to pick it up and play it on full volume with no lights on this Halloween season.
That wraps up our list for some of the 10 best horror games out there. Make sure to leave a like and share if you enjoyed the video. Check us out on Twitch, TikTok, and Discord for more geeky goodness. Until the next video, keep on geeking on.